Good evening and welcome to the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. Hope you're all having a great day. We've got a lot to talk about. And so, it's been an interesting weekend. I don't know about you guys, but watching everything that's been happening, and I want to talk about Europe tonight. And then we'll open it up for questions later. But for right now, I want to talk about Europe. Good evening, Mark Bogosian. How are you? And the reason I want to talk about Europe tonight is because, one, it's all the headlines, and two, because something happened this afternoon that I think changes the calculus completely after what happened to Theresa May today. There's all sorts of stuff. We'll start to look at all the moving parts here. It starts to get really, really interesting. So let's start with this weekend's protests, which started to get out of hand. And they were sincere. The protests in France, of course, is what I'm talking about. We're now into week 4 of those. I fully expect to see a week 5, possibly even week 6. It'll be really interesting to see how that continues to play out. Thousands of people arrested, multiple confrontations with police, tear gas. Everybody came prepped. Gas masks, facial masks, all of it. Really interesting to see how angry the French are, because this is no longer a tax revolt. This is a revolt against neoliberalism. It's a revolt against globalism, and it's a revolt against politicians who lie. It's a revolt against politicians who openly now no longer have any desire to even pay lip service to their people. Now, speaking specifically now about Theresa May in Britain and Emmanuel Macron in France. Look at what happened this weekend with Merkel stepping down, German Chancellor Angela Merkel stepping down as leader of the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union, in Germany. Her replacement, whose name escapes me, is apparently more wedded to Merkel's agenda than Merkel was. So, meet the new boss, same the old boss. In Germany, Macron was another example of that in France when he was elected by branding him a statist, a globalist, a neoliberal, a Rothschild banker, and he was set up and sold to the French people as an outsider and a reformer. What's the first thing he did? He cut taxes for the rich, he raised taxes on the poor, and tried to destroy the middle class. That's what he did. He's done everything that his handlers have asked him to. Done everything. And everything that the globalists want him to do. They want the first world destroyed. And egalitarianism is the way they're doing it, by selling egalitarianism, toxic egalitarianism, to the modern political left. It's reached its crisis point. It's now reached the point where they can't even control the people that they've manipulated into these untenable positions, these unsustainable arguments. Because now we have the rise of the really loony communist left here in the United States, Jeremy Corbyn in Britain, and in other places. So then we wake up this morning and Theresa May doesn't know what to do with her Brexit vote, because she's going to put her Brexit deal in front of Parliament, and it's only this deal, and there's Donald Tusk, it's only this deal or no deal, and Michael Barnier is only this deal or no deal, and Mark Carney's out there, it's going to destroy Brexit, no deal Brexit will destroy the UK economy, which no one believes. All of this stuff's been going on. Pound, pound, pound. Hobson destroys, over and over. And guess what happens? Theresa May wakes up this morning after the full legal advice was given to Parliament after she was censured on last week. And she wakes up and she doesn't have the votes to pass the deal because nobody wants it now because it's even worse than Labor thought it was. So now she's going to pull the vote. And so she pulls the vote, hoping that now they can go in and renegotiate. Now, here's the interesting part about what's happening. And this is the part I just got finished writing my latest article for Strategic Culture. It went into editorial this afternoon because I had an insight as to what was happening when I saw the late afternoon headlines come out of France. I was thinking about this with Theresa May as well. Because now Theresa May has to go back to Brussels. And she has to negotiate a different deal. Brussels has to cave on something. I did a video this afternoon before I had to run out do some errands this afternoon. Got it posted to YouTube when I came back this afternoon about this very subject. And how Theresa May now has to go back to Brussels. And they have to game plan how Brussels is going to cave to this. What concessions they're going to make in order to try and get the next deal passed. But no one believes them anymore. Macron, think about what's going on in Parliament with the Brits. You think that they're going to be any less skeptical now of what May's intentions are than the yellow vest protesters were when Macron said, okay, we'll scrap the diesel. We'll scrap the diesel tax for 6 months. And they said, no, not good enough. We're showing up in force over the weekend. And so then they scrapped it all together. Imagine what Theresa May is thinking right now. How am I going to get, what deal can I get passed? Is there a deal that I can get passed that looks anything like what we've negotiated, which they didn't actually negotiate? They've had this deal on the burn. They've had this deal written up since 3 months after Brexit, before they even filed Article 50. They just tried to run the clock out and then, scare everybody into a deal. And it didn't work. So think about that. And now think about what I'm seeing in the comments from y'all. Because, by the way, I'm trying to do all this and stay on point and read the comments. By the way, really, really difficult. But that being said, that's my job. So, and what I'm hearing is, I've got one person here, Pray for Mojo, who's on the border between Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland, saying everything's quiet, everything's super tense. You can smell the uncertainty in the air surrounding all this. People are now worried. And here's the gig. When May starts to have to backtrack now, when Juncker and Merkel and the rest of them have to start cutting a deal, the air of invulnerability surrounding the inevitability of the EU taking over everything like the fucking Borg pops. Doesn't take much for it to all fall apart. So the situation starts. This is what starts us down the road to the sovereign debt crisis. Because now look at what Macron did this afternoon in France. He not only did he cave on the diesel tax, he's now proposing, oh, no, we'll give you tax cuts for the poor and for the middle class. We're going to raise minimum wage, ensure that there's more income for all of you. Are you kidding? France is already in Dutch with the EU because they can't meet their budget targets. They're the ones who the Italians have been using as the poster children for, if France can violate your budget rules, why the hell can't we? And now Macron is proposing tax cuts and more universal spending, more welfare that the French can't afford. I saw one thing on Twitter today. The early assessment of what this would cost is somewhere between 8 and 10 billion euros a year, which the French don't have. And they say 8 to 10. Try 20 to 30. So when you really start to look at this, you're handing Matteo Salvini a live hand grenade to lob at Brussels. The same weekend that all of this is going on, I saw a great tweet this afternoon. Tony Sankey, who I don't think is here tonight, sent me a tweet from somebody over the weekend who just put up 2 pictures. Paris on fire at night, and the crowd in Rome treating Salvini like he's the second coming of Christ. It's amazing what's beginning to happen. Salvini is going to be able to turn right around and go, no, we are not changing our budget one way. If France gets to do that, then we get to do this. And if he doesn't, he gets to turn around and make Brussels into the worst of the bad guys. It's like you're handing him the tools he needs to stage a popular revolution against Brussels. It's amazing. The more they try to struggle to get out of this Chinese finger trap that they're in, they can't stay together and they can't leave. The more they try to struggle to get out of it, the more trapped they get. It's so obvious to me at this point. And what's really fascinating is that you have to remember that when the people lose confidence in their governments, currency starts to fail. That's why Brussels has had to be so rough on Brexit, Italy, on Greece, on Spain, on Catalonia, on everyone, Poland, everyone. Because you have to keep that air of invulnerability up. You have to keep that air of inevitability up. Because otherwise, capital starts to look at the friggin' situation and goes, fuck we doing here? These people are crazy. They don't have control over anything. And then guess what happens? It all leaves. I'm telling you, watching the stock markets for a long time now, this just doesn't feel like our markets are going to fall off a cliff. Will they go full authoritarian on the yellow vest? They might. And if they do, it'll just make it even worse. If they go full-throated assholes and elbows, nightstick. I mean, they're already lobbing grenades at them. They're already doing flashbang grenades. Guy lost his hand picking up a flashbang grenade to throw back at the police over the weekend. They're already throwing. It's already tear gas. It's already rubber bullets. Okay? I mean, it's already bad. But we're at that stage where it's the end of V for Vendetta, and these people are angry. They're trying to stop the capital outflow. That's what they're worried about. They're worried about the euro falling off a cliff here, because once the euro starts to fall off the cliff, then the carry trades start to unwind. Then the interest rate derivatives that are all, and the swaps that are out there, $15 trillion of which are sitting on Deutsche Bank's balance sheet, and they've got $23 billion in working capital. Wonder why Deutsche Bank's stock is at $3 or some unbelievable shit? Because of this. Because they know what's going on. I didn't see that. MG Stoyanovich tells us that Instagram was ablaze. So I don't follow Instagram at all. With armored trucks flying the EU flag and not the tricolors of Paris. And I think Alex Jones had something about that to say, or somebody tried to send me something from Alex Jones about it. I did see, okay, so France has signed the UN Migration Pact. Well, of course they did. Yes, Thor Doom, I did see that the woman dragged by the cops on the street by hoodie and hair. And I didn't see the wheelchair guy, but it's insane. You know, it's the same thing I said during Catalonia. Remember during the Catalonian independence, when they put down the Catalonian independence movement, I said, you cannot do this. Guys, you may win this battle, but you got bad optics here if you're willing to go in and beat pensioners for having the temerity to say, I don't want to be ruled by you anymore. You people are out of your fucking minds if you think that this is going to work for you. I missed El Vaquero. Thank you. I just missed it in all the stuff that was going through Zero Hedge yesterday. I just missed it. They don't realize what kind of fire they're playing with now. They have won for so long. They have thought that all they have to do is give people a little bit of a head and then let them have a fake election and then they'll die down again. And it's always worked in the past and it's not going to work anymore. And I'm telling you, the same thing's going to happen here. That's why I'm banging on about Trump betraying everything. I mean, we can't even get into what's been going on with that guy, because the headlines from today continue to support the idea that Trump is not in charge of anything anymore. And at some point, the whole system has to collapse. And Trump betrayal of his base, when a majority of them finally figure it out, that Trump's not going to be Orange Jesus. He doesn't have a plan, because he doesn't. Maybe he has the strength of character to, come back at some point in the future, but until he does, I'm off the train, guys. I wish he will. I'll be happy when he does. I'll be the first one. Rah, rah. Yeah, you go, Don. You give him hell. I don't think it's going to happen. It's going to be like that. MG, Stoyanovich. It's going to be like the old USSR or Yugoslavia when it devolved. Yes. It's going to be bad. It's going to fall apart quickly. And once it starts in Europe, it's going to spread. And once the financial markets start to collapse, then the political, when people lose confidence in political systems, then the financial markets start to break down. When the financial markets start to break down, then everything, all hell breaks loose. And all of these control systems fail. All of them. All at once. All of them fail all at once. Liberty Cat, it's funny. I didn't want to have to do this. I wanted to believe that he had a plan. I wanted to believe that he was on our side. I believe that he was on our side. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that he's on Donald Trump's side. And he's in survival mode, personal survival mode. That's it. Now, you can blame him for that or you can not, but it's the truth. It's where it is. So, and it's time to put away childish things. Certainly, Trump's Twitter feed is becoming increasingly childish. And that's that. So, what about the IMF and the World Bank and all of this? Poet for Reasoning is asking. That's a really good question. Notice how the IMF hasn't said anything. Notice how the IMF is not saying anything. Nothing. They know what's coming. And the plan has been for the IMF to become the world's central bank. They know that Europe's not salvageable. Okay. Silvia Sulin says he takes hits every day, 24/7. How would you handle it after 2 years? I would have a hard time with it. I'm not blaming Trump for caving. Understand that I understand the situation. I sympathize with him. But it's not about that. As a citizen of the United States, as a citizen of the world, as all of this stuff, I didn't hire him to cave. I hired him to do the job, and I would stand by him and to stop listening to the wrong fucking people, to stop listening to CNN, to stop pussyfooting around Robert Mueller. Fire his ass. Take the freaking slings. Let the Democrats lose their fucking minds. They still don't have an impeachable offense. If he had shut this thing down a year and a half ago, none of this stuff would be around. None of this stuff would be on the table. His own passivity and his own weakness has left him in the situation he's in. He has no one to blame but himself. None. Because Donald Trump wants to be liked too much, and Donald Trump doesn't want to give up being Donald Trump to be president and to do what needs to be done. I hope that he did. That he was willing to do that. I hoped it. Didn't. Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. I'm not blaming the guy. I don't know that, but let's not kid ourselves. Let's contrast him and Putin. You guys know the story of Putin when Putin took over, and I'll get back to the whole IMF thing in a couple minutes. This is very important. When Yeltsin approached Putin, if you don't believe me on this, watch the Putin interviews from Oliver Stone, because he talks about this. When Yeltsin approached Putin about taking over the country, because this was the moment in time when Yeltsin realized he was being set up for stealing $7 billion worth of IMF money, which Bill Browder and Edmund Safra and all of them were involved in. Martin Armstrong has the story on this, yada, yada, yada. When Yeltsin turned to Putin and asked him if he wanted to take the country over, because Yeltsin was going to have to step down if they were going to save Russia. So, and Yeltsin's final act, he realized he had been played perfectly by these vicious people, and they were going to destroy Russia. And at the end, Yeltsin did the right thing. He didn't let them take him down. He abdicated and handed the country to someone who would not betray Russia. But when that happened, when he approached Putin, Putin said, I understand the situation. I need a couple days to think about this. His family went into hiding. No one knew where Putin's family was for years. Being ex-KGB and then FSB. I mean, he had the resources to disappear his family so that they would not be used as a weapon against him. He had to deal with, he was married, he had children. This job has cost Putin his marriage. It cost him years with his grandchildren and his children. Killed his driver last year. So, Putin understood the ramifications of his decision before he made it. And then he made the decision and sacrificed the rest of his life for Russia. That's it. Remember, Putin is younger than Trump. He took over, he was what, 50 years old? Oh, life ahead of him. He was my age when he took over Russia. Trump's life is over. He's got, what, good maybe 10, maybe 12 years left in him? 72 years old? He's Scottish. He doesn't drink. He could live till he's 90. Sure. It's important to understand the difference here. Important to understand the difference in personalities. Well, I think the deep state threatened Trump's family. What do you think? I think. Of course. That's the difference. And I thought that Putin would be able to help guide Trump through this. Because, of course, the very people that Putin's been fighting for the last 18 years are the very same people that Trump is fighting. This is why I thought Trump was going to be able to have this, or Trump would have some form of plan. I really did. Because at a certain level, I thought he understood what the situation was. But he doesn't. The very fact that he went after Rex Tillerson the way he did after Tillerson was actually trying to be conciliatory and just explain the situation. Explain his situation. He wasn't being malicious. He wasn't trying to backbite Trump. And Trump is so fucking thin-skinned that he threw him under the bus and made Mike Pompeo and said that Mike Pompeo is smarter than Rex Tillerson. Mike Pompeo hasn't run anything his entire fucking life. Rex Tillerson should have been president, for Christ's sake. At least he's an executive. Trump's not an executive. He's an executive of what? A real estate business where he mostly just puts his brand on shit? Rex Tillerson ran Exxon fucking Mobil, for Christ's sake. Man's an engineer. And Silvia, who are these people that President Trump has hired to give him this bad information? I was willing to overlook all of this stuff for a long time until I'm now watching the process of Pompeo and Bolton just try to destroy Korean unification. I mean, how much more do we want to deal with here? America's not getting stronger under Trump. We're getting weaker because he's alienating everybody at every level, including the use of the dollar. While he spends more than $1 trillion more a year, then he's going to take in. And he'll spend more than that. And guess what? They will back him into a corner to spend even more money. Trump's going to just think of it like a balance sheet. They're going to think, well, what's the cost of capital? It's cheap. We're going to lower interest rates, and we're going to deficit. We're going to buy some debt, and we're going to build value that way. Because that's what you do in business. You either sell equity or you buy debt to grow. Okay. Enough of Trump. Get back to what's really, truly important. Because Trump is not important in the grand scheme of things. Not. What's important is the failure of the European Union, which he will dance on its grave, and his Twitter feed will be fun, but it won't be relevant. Okay, before I do that, I think I'm going to use Thor Doom's quote. Salvini told reporters, "I think that nothing good has come out of the French-German Union for Europe. I want to rebuild the Berlin-Rome axis to give the EU a new impetus." Well, that's interesting. Once Berlin has been thoroughly purged of globalists, I'm sure. So we have Trump going crazy on sanctions, extrajudicial overreach, as MG Stoyanovich reminds us, provoking a trade war with China, and then turning around and abrogating pretty much all of international law, putting paid by the way, exactly what Rex Tillerson said. Mr. President, you can't do that. It's not legal. When you hear this stuff, you realize that the Democrats are right in saying he's not fit to be president if he's not willing to actually abide by the rules, which is interesting because for a long time, I thought he was actually legislating like a president. No. That's Congress's job. Go do it. You guys go fix healthcare and I'll sign it. You guys go fix the wall. I'll sign it. But I'm not going to unilaterally make these decisions. Smart. It's so when we have that happening, and now we deal with the situation in Europe. Is Salvini talking in terms of Il Duce, or am I reading that wrong? No, I think actually he's not talking about that. But I think he's talking about the rising Euroscepticism there. I don't see Salvini as any kind of Il Duce style fascist. That's not the situation. And if it is, well, we'll find out in the next 6 to 18 months. We'll see. But I don't think so. Yeah, it's not good optics, though. I'll give you that. Of course, that's a translation. Whose translation is that? So, but I mean, look, don't kid yourself. If he used the word Axis, if he used the Italian word for Axis when talking about Rome and Berlin, then they're going to use it against him. Okay. It's just happening. Younger generations really don't care about those optics. This is true. But when you start to look at the situation in Europe, when it starts to break down, when you start to really think about what the consequences of a breakdown, on sovereign debt breakdown in Europe is going to be. Look, the problem is bigger than the central banks. There will have to be and this has been the plan all along. So I find it interesting, actually, that the IMF is not saying anything. That they've left Macron out to hang in France after they made him. And the fallback plan is like, look, okay, well, if Brexit, they go hard Brexit and this happens and Macron can't handle this thing that's happening in France and we can't rein in Salvini. Well, then the next thing is let the whole friggin' system collapse and then they'll beg the IMF to come in and salvage everything. That's always going to be their plan B. Look at what the EU said today. They're going forward with their special purpose vehicle in order to get around sanctions for Iran. It's going to be more than that, by the way. Far more than just for Iran. It's going to be able to ensure that Germany gets the Nord Stream 2 pipeline built. It's going to be for all of it. If the EU goes down, what happens to the ECB? Good question. I think that what happens here is that the European Union will break apart. That you will see currency blocks. It'll break apart and it'll become just a Northern European currency block. Because here's something else I thought about. I wrote about a little bit of this in this month's newsletter about the potential for there to be some banking issues, right? Where you should be looking for what banks to be looking at. But look at what's been happening over the course of the last couple of months. I talked about the troubles that Danske Bank is in right now in Holland. Correct me if I got that right for once. That Danske is in trouble for quote-unquote money laundering. Supposedly Russian transactions that they weren't supposed to, or what it wasn't supposed to be cleared. The definition of money laundering has really changed over the course of the last 10 years. So transactions that were perfectly legal 10 years ago are no longer illegal, because now we're angry with Russia in a way that we weren't before? Or is this just another way to pierce the confidence of the oldest banks in Europe Yes, thanks to Bill Browder. In order to usher in the era of the IMF. Understand what I'm saying? Do you understand the connect the dots? You undermine Danske, one of the oldest, most trusted banks in Europe, with effectively bogus money laundering schemes. Destroy its creditworthiness, destroy its stock price, destroy its reputation, all of it. You know, when the banks start fighting amongst themselves, you know you're near endgame. Firmly believe that Goldman Sachs is in trouble. We've talked about this before. So, now what? How funny would it be if that laundered money was Poroshenko's and that was and Yanukovych, the other Ukrainian guy, to sell arms? The goalposts keep getting moved. It's called gaslighting, crazy making behavior designed to induce the enemy to make a mistake and try to make them react in order to smear them. Yep. If the IMF was going to take over in 2008, why did they, Bank of the World, why didn't they do it in 2008? Because that wasn't necessary then. Coordinating the central banks, that would have been too big a move, Joanne. Because the central banks weren't threatened by Lehman Brothers. It wasn't, the problem then wasn't big enough. It wasn't. The Fed and the ECB and the BOJ and the SNB, the Swiss National Bank, they could coordinate policy and they could handle it all. And WDM makes a very good point, which is to say that the explosion in derivative hedges amongst banks is today is what the problem is. And that's grown because of the systemic risk of zero-bound interest rates that has occurred over the last 10 years since 2008. Then it was simply just a mortgage crisis problem. Well, that's what too big to fail means, M. Josanovich, right? That they all became too big to fail, and they all knew they had a central bank put behind them, meaning they all just kept taking the money, reflating their balance sheets through interest on excess reserves, and levering up their balance sheets again, and fueling their prop trading desks, which none of them have anymore, supposedly. Even though there's a ton of friggin' loopholes in the Dodd-Frank to allow them to get around the Volcker rule and all this crap. Is Germany under attack from the U.S. via banking regulations / prosecutions and BMW being punitively hit over emissions legislation? Actually, it wasn't BMW, it was Volkswagen, right? Some of it, absolutely. It's been a war going on now between the Germans and the United States. I said this a while ago that I thought that the United States had declared war on Germany. And I certainly thought that the VW diesel scandal was part of it. What will be the trigger? What will be the trigger for all of this? Brett Harris is asking. I'm assuming that's Brett Harris. What's the trigger? Any of the things we've already talked about. A hard Brexit in combination with the fall of the Macron government. And Macron then turning around and trying to pacify the unrest with tax cuts and more and more money that he doesn't have. And then Germany turning around and saying, no, you can't do that. And Italy saying, well, why can't we do that? All of those things together. It's not going to be one thing. It's going to be one thing eventually that would be blamed for in the history books. But all of these things that we're talking about create the conditions for that one little event, bing, one small bank to go under, one derivative hedge book to blow up, whatever. Whole thing explodes because it first takes the air of invulnerability to pop. And then the fallout starts to occur. Then capital starts to move. So here we are today, talking about this, held you for weeks on end to watch certain days in the markets. What happened today? Well, there was a buying opportunity that arose in U.S. stocks. They rallied into the close. Okay, they weren't up much on the day, but they were down as much as the Dow. I think the Dow was down as much as 250 or 280 points at one point. Closed up 60 or 70 or whatever the hell it did today. I don't really know, and I don't really care. What I cared about was watching gold sell off early during the liquidity problem. We still have, by the way, now a structural inversion in the middle of the U.S. yield curve, which did not go away today. Been there since last week. 5 years trading less than the 3-year. An inversion in the U.S. yield curve. This is happening. Real. It's here, folks. Gold didn't trade with the euro. The euro was up this morning and gold was up last night, and then they both started to sell off. Then the euro collapsed and gold bounced off of 1245, 1246 and went back to 1250. Gold is beginning to decouple from the euro from a strong dollar. It's starting to decouple from the weak dollar strong gold trade or strong dollar weak gold trade. That trade is starting to collapse. Bifurcate. Gold is showing strength alongside the dollar. Why? We're starting to get really worried. The stock markets are all breaking down. Now, the next thing that happens is when big money finally looks at all of this crazy shit that's happening and goes, whoa, if these things happen, bond markets are fucked. Why do you think they're defending $1.13 so bad? Why, if on the euro? Why do you think they defended $1.15.5 on the euro for 6 months? And then when it finally failed, they rolled back to $1.13, and now $1.13 is their marginal line. They won't let that go. Yeah, I am Gold Goats and Guns, Silvia. And good to meet you too. Okay. I'm missing a lot of your comments. I think I should probably stop ranting and actually read some of them. Let's get back to it. Just give me a second. I want to read some of the IMF is now not your father's IMF. The Chinese are very big there. They're part of the peg now. Remember also that the Chinese are notorious for sending their central bankers to go work in commodity and bond pits before they're allowed to actually set policy. You guys know how to trade. They understand how the market actually works, as opposed to what our ivory tower egghead academicians that run the Fed do. They teach the top guys teach their kids Mandarin, and Lagarde already floated a trial balloon of moving the IMF to Beijing. Yeah, when a French president is promising classical music tax cuts for lower income folks, he's worried about his job. He wouldn't do it otherwise. What about it? Brett Harris asks, what about a real attempt to unseat Trump? It's possible. If he keeps rolling over, then they can create whatever they want. And they may. If that happens, forget it. Katie bar the door, this entire country explodes in political and social unrest. Because, look, I'm not happy with Trump right now, but if they tried to remove him from office over some fucking hush money to Stormy Daniels, which is a private contract that has nothing to do with this presidency, I'm sorry, I'll be out in the friggin' streets complaining. I'll be out in the streets with my fucking guns in my hand. Are you kidding me? That's wrong. That's it. That's it. At that point, the whole thing completely jumps the shark, shits the bed, flies the coop, the whole 9 yards. I use whatever freaking metaphor you want. Doesn't really matter. That point, it's on, baby. And I can tell you right now, at that point, an entire swath of this country loses their freaking minds. The danger of war is real. Syria, U.S. sending ships to the Black Sea. Russians just sent nuclear-capable strategic bombers to Venezuela. It's Hillary's foreign policy. Yes, it is. It's John Bolton and Mike Pompeo are in charge of it. Kushners are teaching their kids to speak Chinese, while Kushner continues to advise his father to not give up the Saudi Arabians. Meanwhile, the Israelis are saying they're ready to formalize their alliance with Saudi Arabia. Are they kidding? Might as well get it out in the open. Russia's problem is and will be until something culturally changes. It's the corruption. Well, that's part of what's interesting about watching Russia. Because we're seeing that come back to the fore. What we're seeing in Russia, I think what we're seeing in Russia, and I haven't been there, but what I see is that for about the first, 12, 13, 14, 15 years that Putin was in power, it was about getting control of the Russian state and about fixing Russia's balance sheet and getting everything stabilized, getting the populace stabilized, getting income stabilized, getting the country stabilized as a political entity. Today, if you look at what he's been doing legislatively and what he's been focused on legislatively for the last 4 years or so, certainly since the ruble crisis of 2014, 2015, so 3.5 years now, it has been about allowing that groundswell to improve the country from the ground up, i.e. from the people demanding better services, the people demanding more transparency, less corruption, and everything else. And all Putin can do is help that process along, right? And that's why they're looking, and all their corruption indices continue to fall, as Brett Harris has pointed out. Cost of doing business in Russia, it's climbing rapidly on the best places to do business in the world list that the World Bank puts out every year. Putin's goal is 20th by 2020. I don't think they'll make it, but it'll be close. It's rapidly improving, and where it's rapidly improving are in the important things. Ready? This is where they're rapidly improving. This is where they're better than the United States, by the way. For small and medium businesses to get proper redress of grievance in the courts. According to the World Bank, the Russians have been better at that than the United States has been for the last 2 years. So what Putin is doing is he's encouraging a retraditionalization in Russia. He's encouraging all faiths, people to go back to celebrate their religions, all of the religions. Why he's there to open a mosque, a major mosque in Moscow, as well as to try and defend the Russian Orthodox Church from being politicized. Okay, it's all of those things, and allowing and watching, according to yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done. Putin will be the first one to admit it. Stoyanovich is reminding us that taxation is still an issue, even though they have a good flat tax system with an upper limit on how much on a matching into Social Security, right? So they have a very similar Social Security system that we do in that respect. You pay only up to a certain amount, and then you don't pay anymore. So if you're making X amount of money in the United States, it's $115,000. After $115,000 a year, you don't pay Social Security income. It's the Social Security tax anymore. You don't pay into Social Security. That's all you have to pay in for. $115,000 is a lot of fucking money. In Russia, it's a lot lower than that. I think it's around $50,000 or $55,000 equivalent, and it's in rubles, so it's different. But they have an ironclad 13% flat tax rate, period. But then once you're solidly middle class in Russia, or solidly a little middle class from a purchasing power parity standpoint, roughly $50,000 a year, $50,000 to $60,000 a year in purchasing power parity, right? In our, not in rubles, but in what $50,000, what a family of four would pay, would live on a medium income here in the United States, around $53,000 a house, $4,000. So once you reach that level in Russia, that's it. You're done. And they have a 13% corporate. It's a slightly higher corporate tax rate. I think it's not 13. I think Brett Harris may be right at 17. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's better than the United States is even after Trump's cut. The point being, is that the Russians have the right incentive structure in place, and that the government has an auto budgeting feature. Oil prices rise and fall. Well, if they fall, they cut spending, and if it rises, it allows them to spend more money because they get more money. But the amount of money that is spent based on the oil tariff that they collect from oil and gas tariffs, it floats on a yearly basis. So it is what it is. I mean, I know all this stuff. So I think, Mike Bernard, it is that. I think if I understand your question, is it a morality defense against the Western neoliberal postmodernist maniacs? Yes. I think Putin understands that that's the problem, and that, right, $50,000 in Russia you would live like a millionaire. The equivalent of an American living on $50,000 in Russia, right? A family of four has a hard time living on $50,000 here, $50,000 a year in a lot of the United States. It's solidly lower middle class, right? Let's not kid ourselves. So once you reach that level in Russia, you're not paying into the pension system. You don't have to be paying. You don't have to be making. Look, think about it. If a husband and wife were independently, work independently, $115,000 each. It's $230,000 that they're paying into Social Security. Insane. And it's insolvent. So their balance sheet is in good shape and everything else. And then that's the model that Russia's the model. And the RT thing today about the RT report today that according to Bloomberg, Russia's now the second best emerging economy behind Malaysia, which is, I would agree with, and ahead of China. So I'm not surprised by that. I, as a matter of fact, thought that that's exactly what would happen because the balance sheet is too good. 17% debt to GDP or whatever the hell it is now when you convert it into dollars after the ruble collapse. It's still not even close to being interesting anymore. What do I think will happen with the Orthodox Church in Ukraine? The split is purely political. I would really be out over my skis if I tried to give you an idea of what I think is going on. There are a lot of people out there who understand this issue better than I would, and I would really hate to comment too much about it. I think it's not good for the Russian Orthodox Church, and that's the reason it's being done. That's it. When there's almost no debt, when the whole country has foreign exchange reserves, that's enough to pay off the country's entire debt load, corporate and public and private. Yeah, you could say they're in good shape. So, I think Russia's official gold holdings are vastly understated. Same with China. And I think they do it on purpose. And I don't blame them. I think what you're going to see over the course of the next few years with China, FYI, is a regular restatement of how much gold they actually own, and they're going to upwardly revise it in order to support the yuan as the dollar falls apart, as they decouple from the dollar, in order to reassure the markets that their credit bubble, which is massive, is actually better capitalized than the market thinks it is. It's going to be it's a perceptual thing. It's a perceptional thing. Okay. They're going to use their actual gold reserves in order to generate confidence in their management while they go through the gyrations of having to unwind this immense mercantilist bubble. And I don't, oh God, I can't believe I just lost the word. I don't envy them the job they have ahead of themselves. They have a massive job ahead of them. But it is what it is. I agree, no debt is good. It is one of the things that I kind of preach. So, and if you do have debt, it should be fully capitalized with other assets at a minimum. And then only because it's cheaper to buy debt than it would be to sell your other asset. China has an internal and external version of the yuan, yes. The one that freely circulates around the world, and then there's the one that circulates into offshore and onshore yuan. All right, we're coming up on the end of the hour. Do we have any other questions before I sign off for the evening? It's been a long day. I had a lot to get done today, and somehow I got it all done. It's been one of the more productive days I've had in a while. And can't really complain then. So they've insulated. Well, that's what the United States can't stand. They can't stand the fact that they have a partially closed capital account, so that we can't currency raid them the same way we normally would. The same way we would everybody else. Talk about hard Brexit. I'm going to. I don't know if I have much time to talk about it. I think that I'd rather save that for a larger discussion after we see the fallout. We'll talk about it on Friday. Merkel's replacement saying they want to review Nord Stream 2. Is there any danger there? I don't know. I hadn't even seen that yet. I would say that if she is saying that, well, that'll be interesting. But she's not chancellor. So what? Unless Merkel's going to step down as chancellor in the next 6 months. Because you got to remember, Nord Stream 2 is going to be built by the end of this year coming up. Nord Stream 2 is a real live project in 12 months. 12 months. That's it. All this talk about, well, it's here. They're already laying pipe. You know, this chick is not going to go against German industry that wants that pipeline, which is why it's here. Which is why it's coming. What do you mean? Elaborate on that? Okay. In 12 months, the last thing before I go. In 12 months, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline will be a reality and will be shipping gas to Germany. In no way, manner, shape, or form is the new leader of the CDU, who I really should know her name off the top of my head, but I don't. If she's saying, well, you know, we'll review whether this is a good project for Germany or not, by the time they're done reviewing it internally with the CDU, where she's not chancellor, so who cares? It'll be done. It'll be finished. It'll be complete. The only issue is that Germany has the last mile. What are they going to do? Allow the Russians to build the pipeline up to the Germany shore, and then they're going to say no, you can't have it. At which point, all the German industrialists that actually run that fucking country throw her ass out of office. Done. You think we have you really think that that's not going to happen? You think Siemens and BMW and VW Porsche and the rest of them, and shit, BASF, everybody. I mean, even the Swiss companies and everybody else, because you got to remember, most of Western Europe benefits from Nord Stream 2 because that adds capacity to the existing pipeline system to distribute gas around the country. Moreover, Germany has the friggin' hammer politically to then they get to turn into evil Russia and they get to turn off gas. That's the whole reason that Poland is scared of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It has nothing to do with Russia. It has everything to do with the fact that they're scared that the Germans are going to use the gas reselling as a weapon politically within the EU, which is why Poland is stupid for listening to the United States when they should just make a contract with Russia to ensure that that doesn't happen. But nobody said Andrzej Duda is a smart guy, because he's not. But one of these days, he'll figure it out or he'll get the post from office. All right. Now it's an hour and 2 minutes. I'm done. Guys, if you liked what you heard today, please give a like and subscribe down below. I'm sure you already have. Also, make sure you click the little bell for notifications so that you can find out next time I publish a video or go live, which is Monday nights at 8 and Friday nights at 8:30. You can find my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com. I also write for Strategic Culture once a week or so. And you can follow me on Twitter when I actually obtain the need to tweet over at TFL1728. And you can support my work over at Patreon/GoldGoatsAndGuns, where you can get the Gold Goats and Guns investment newsletter for $12 a month, where I try and wrap all this up into a coherent investment thesis. You guys take care. You have a great night. Thank you very much. It was a good show. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. Keep your stick on the ice.